Bone Spear Necro nerfed tremendously, crit invulnerable into the ground, blood and shadow buffed. First the new unique and aspect, then we talk buffs and nerfs. Lidless Wall, unique shield. Lucky hit. While you have an active Bone Storm, hitting an enemy outside of a Bone Storm has up to a 25% chance to spawn an additional Bone Storm at their location. Each of your active sacrifice bonuses increases the chance by 25%. So you could increase this by another 75%, but you kind of want to have the Golem have the Bone Storm, so let's say by 50%. And the total number of additional Bone Storms you can have by +1. Oh, so I sacrifice mages and warriors and I can get +2 Bone Storms, and I have like a 75% chance to, with a lucky hit, actually get bonus Bone Storms. Oh boy, that could actually be fun, especially with shadow Bone Storms and then like popping them up like there's no tomorrow. Beautiful. Golem finally useful. Golem Bone Storm build. That gets followed up by 3 aspects in total, 2 general, 1 necromancer. First, the general. Audacity utility. When there are at least 5 close enemies, stun them for 2 to 4 seconds. This can only occur once every 20 seconds. I mean, not bad. Utility can go on the boots, so might be fun to just stun everyone around. And then Craven, mobility aspect. You gain 20 to 40% increased movement speed when moving away from slowed or chilled enemies. Necromancer can use any kind of speed, but the Audacity actually seems interesting. Every 20 seconds, just stunning everyone around you. If there's at least 5 close enemies, that's nice for engaging because you run into a pair of monsters and they all get stunned for essentially 4 seconds straight away. You kind of blood mist around, grasping veins, tendrils them together, then explode them. Not bad. And now the new Necromancer aspect, it's an offensive one. Gore Quills. Blood Lance will consume blood orbs to also conjure lances from them. Each additional blood lance deals 20 to 50% of normal damage and prioritizes targeting unlanced enemies. Blood lance on top. I mean, no one was playing blood lance builds before, but I think it's even receiving more buffs now. Heads up, in all the bug fixes, I didn't see anything about the Bone Prison. It was like dungeons, gameplay, druids, necromancer, and here's fixed where necromancers could not obtain daggers. Minions would have their life bonus deactivated while in town. Bone Spear casting through Shilling Winds. Enhanced Bone Spear, yeah, cool, we're fine. And then fixed an issue where canceling Blood Mist when it's already off cooldown would immediately recast it. Perfect. This is actually really annoying. But nothing about Bone Prison. Still working. Mendel players rejoice. Before we get to the Necro buffs nerfs, Renown is now more worth it. Side quest is 30 and dungeons is 40. And that's actually pretty good because now you get faster up without even trying. Because you're going to do dungeons anyways, nightmare dungeons, and some side quests. So that's a welcome change. I would even add another 10 on top. Now to the vast plethora of Necromancer changes. First, Decompose is now 50% slow. 30 or 50%, bananas or apples, doesn't matter. For normal sever casts required for vulnerable reduced from 4 to 3. So every third sever cast makes enemies vulnerable now, completely useless. You can get 22% bonus damage for every minion you have summoned, or make people vulnerable every third cast. That bullshit, forget about that. So these don't matter. But the next one, enhanced blood surge healing increase from 2.5 to 3% of maximum life. Seems minimal, but I was already healing for 600 HP per blood surge on my 8,000 HP now. And now I'm getting even more heal with a blood surge, which gives you more damage, more survivability, more standing power. Blood Necromancer is going to be on top. Going to probably make a solo build again, maybe with the Golem. Also, enhanced Blood Lance damage reduction for piercing reduced from 15 to 10%. Blood Lance even better. Bone Prison initial essence gain from 15 to 25. Doesn't really matter because Bone Prison is being used in essence-less builds that don't actually use much essence. Some actually do still use core skills. Abhorrent Iron Maiden healing increase from 5 to 7% of maximum life. No one really uses Iron Maiden. It's not a bad skill, but it's also not useful. And yes, I know the Shadow plus Iron Maiden and Decrepify together 40% bonus damage. It's just simply not worth it. Golems move faster and unhindered through enemies when their cooldown is activated. Thank you. Anyone noticed Golems being completely useless? Yes. Supreme Blood Wave leaves behind Blood Orbs early in its path. It's not that Supreme Blood Wave is completely useless, even if you make it Shadow, I'm sorry. So nothing can buff that ability unless they completely change it. Raise Skeleton, Corpse Explosion, Corpse Tunnels range for auto-targeting corpses on mouse and keyboard increased by 50%. Super important. Because sometimes you take your drink, I don't know, do something with your hand, touch yourself, and then you try to press the ability button, and it does like literally nothing because it just moves in left, right, whatsoever. So this is kind of nice, especially for people that need accessibility options to be able to auto-target that. Raise Skeleton Priest bonus damages from 20 to 30%. Minimal, but hey, every bonus damage, we don't complain. And then the Skeleton Priest healing from 10 to 15 is nice because I stopped putting points into Skeleton Priest at all because 10, 15 or whatever doesn't matter. It's good enough. And if your minions die, you'd rather resummon them with full HP than trying to stutter heal them with like a 20, 25, whatsoever percent healing, right? Now to the RIP Bone Spear gang. Evasion bonus damage to vulnerable reduced from 6, 12, 18 to 5, 10, 15. And I think that's important because vulnerable was playing a big role in scaling your damage absolutely insane. I know it stinks to have your Bone Spear super ultra crits nerfed a little bit, only by 3%, but vulnerable was hardcore escalating. Transfusion minion healing increased from 15, 30, 45 to 20, 40, 60 is quite useless because no one actually really plays transfusion. Then getting the Drain Vitality up from 25 to 30% is mental. I've been already playing this with my Death Speaker's Pendant minion, Blood Summoner Necromancer, and now having a better chance to fortify is superb. So Blood Necro is slowly moving from like an absolute bottom tier to a high amazing one. And then Amplified Damage increase from 369 to 4812. And here comes something interesting. So that is 3% more multiplicative damage if an enemy is cursed, right? But it also means if you now have Amplified Damage plus 3, which my amulet actually has, that's even more now because you go from 4812. Before I was going from 9 to 18%. Well, now I'm going to go from 12 to 24%. Beautiful, ain't it? Necromancer minion will now automatically resummon after respawning during a world boss fight. Well, thank you, I guess. Skeleton warriors get 50% thorns. Not bad if you play a thorn build. Shadow Skeleton Mage attacks required for an additional Shadow Bolt reduced from 5 to 4. That's really good, but there's something still off about the Shadow Blight interaction that we need to talk about. Bone Skeleton Mage upgrade fortify amount increased from 11 to 20%, completely useless because you fortify anyways with Reapers and Necrotic Carapace. You don't need this. Iron Golem upgrade attacks required for slam attack reduced from 5 to 4. Make that 3 and it's interesting. But even though Golem builds are getting more and more interesting, considering that we're also getting the Malignant Hearts, which might give us a bonus Golem. Come on, Malignant bonus Golem Heart. Very important, the Essence Glyph bonus now affects all damage instead of just core skills. That's extremely interesting because Essence Glyph was giving you core skill critical strike damage. And now it's everything critical strike damage, which is insane because you can use it for Corpse Explosion. And yes, the Shadow Black Key passive can critical strike too. So that glyph now became absolutely mental. Splintering Aspect Bone Shard damage. Splintering Aspect Bone Shard damage bonus reduced from 50 to 100% to 30 to 60%. Sorry, Bone Spear, but you're getting absolutely devastated right now. My condolences. 60% is still massive though, and just takes away from the 20 million crits. Now it's only 15 million. Aspect of the Plunging Darkness bonus damage increased from 50, 100 to 75 to 125. That buffs Bone Prison even more to do Blight in it that does damage. That being said, you're not playing Bone Prison for the damage. You're playing Bone Prison for the bugged interaction with Ring of Mendel, you know? So thank you, but not needed. Also, Coldbringer's Aspect Blizzard cooldown reduced from 10 to 8 seconds. That is more Blizzards from your Skeleton Mages, more stagger, more fun. It is very good in the beginning of the game until like level 85, 90 when you push higher keys. If you do have the Aspect slot, it really doesn't hurt to just have the Essence Mages make you Essence and also just stagger freeze everything. It's beautiful and now happens even more often. Aspect of the Hungry Blood chance to fire Blood Lens increased from 10 to 20 to 13 to 23%. Only 3%, but again, we noticed that Blood Necromancer needs significant buffs to kind of be on top because no one is really playing them. And the Blood-Soaked Aspect damage increased up to 0.31, which is a thank you for your Blood Mist now doing even more shadow damage trail. But realistically, you use the shadow trail from the Blood Mist to stack more Shadow Blight. You don't actually use it to do damage. So again, thank you for the buff, but you don't actually use it for damage. Use it for stacking the damage to be able to 180% bonus damage. Same goes for the Aspect of the Ultimate Shadow damage increase from 0.22 to 0.48. That's a huge buff, to be honest. So now your Bone Storm Shadow damage Whirly Twirly does even more Bone Storm Shadow damage Whirly Twirly, which is quite nice because Bone Storm does significant amounts of damage and now it does even more shadow damage. But again, you're mostly using that to stack up the Shadow Blight shenanigans so you can trigger more Shadow Blights to get more escalating Shadow Blight damage. But if the overall damage of the whole build gets boosted, why not? That makes the whole Shadow Necromancer even more viable and pushes back the Bone Necromancer. They're nerfing the aspect of the Grasping Veins, and it kind of goes with all the critical strike damage nerf they're doing in vulnerable damage nerf. It's now down from 60% to 40%, which is still massive. It's absolutely massive because it's only the damage that gets reduced, but not the chance. So you can still get 20% critical strike chance, which you need. And all in all, the aspect of the Grasping Veins is mental regardless. But if you do 40% on the amulet, you go up to 60%. If you use it on a 200 weapon, it would still be 80% bonus. It is, regardless of that, a must-have and beautiful. The Bone Storm prolonging aspect is now 5 to 10 seconds. That's nice, but keep in mind that you also need corpses to actually expand it further and further. So no corpses, no expansion. So more in this case is not always more because you also need 10 corpses to expand it by 10 seconds. Blood Surge gets buffed even more with a Bloodbath aspect. Instead of doing minimal 60%, now doing 50% Nova damage reduction. So it gets another 10% damage buff on the bonus Nova. Super good. And then aspect of Reanimation Skeletons damage bonus increased from 20 to 30 to 30 to 50. So again, skeletons are slowly going to even more damage, but we'll need another 20% buff before we can even talk about skeletons being main damage. They're also buffing our uniques. Bloodless Scream Essence gain increased from 2 to 5 to 7 to 10, which is significant. Remember, Bloodless Scream allows you to chill enemies, and you can use your skeleton freeze mages with the blizzards to also chill and freeze. And if you attack frozen enemies, you actually get 10 essence back. That's quite nice. And then the Deathless Visage damage increased from 0.25 to 0.38 in total. Well, that's after nerfing the Bone Spear so much, definitely needed. Now to overall aspect changes, because this is also very important for the Necromancer. Disobedience only has 60 stacks now, and you can get a less maximum amount of bonus armor, which I find plenty stupid because Disobedience was really what was keeping you alive in higher Nightmare dungeons, and they're kind of nerfing that. The only thought I have here is that the Malignant Hearts are going to make up for this, and the bonus of Disobedience plus the Malignant Heart might have been too much. Very important drop rate adjustments as well. Increased bonus to drop ancestral and sacred items in Nightmare dungeons from 5 to 10%. Removed a 20% chance to drop an extra equipment item from elite monsters outside of Nightmare dungeons and Hell Tides. So go into Nightmare dungeons. Increased chance to drop an extra equipment from elite monsters in Nightmare dungeons by 10%. Nightmare dungeons now have a 50% chance to drop a second legendary item upon completion, and Nightmare dungeons now give 3 rare items upon completion, not only 1. So finishing Nightmare dungeons is now more worth it than ever. But keep in mind, don't play with too many friends because now the monster scaling is up from 58% to 100%. All in all, what they're reducing is critical strike damage on everything because they don't want critical strike to overscale that much. That and also vulnerable damage. That being said, they're reducing this as well on swords, which is important, I think, because a two-handed sword gives you 52.5% plus of critical strike damage. And that scaling was a little bit crazy, to be honest. So that would be now 26% in total, which is still fine. But it was kind of ruling out all the other weapons because I needed to use a sword. There was no question because swords were so good. Now I can use a scythe again if I want to. The life on kill is completely useless, but at least I'm not losing plus 50% critical strike damage. So like it's a nerf, but it's kind of opening up the options because it doesn't force you down a certain road, even though it does nerf builds in general. For the Necromancer, it's quite looking juicy. Blood Necromancer in total got buffed, Bone got nerfed. Right now, Shadow seems to be on top. The Sever Necromancer will definitely not suffer much from these changes. Yes, sure, a little bit the critical strike tweaks and twerks, but it shouldn't be doing all too much because the build doesn't rely only on high Sever crits. It does way more than that. But also the minion build with a Blight and everything, with a Bone Prison, more buffed than ever. Blood Summoner on top. I am excited to see what the Malignant Hearts will bring. And they're showing that they're bringing out interesting new uniques and new aspects as well. So I am happy with the changes. Only thing I hate is obviously Helltide Chest of Mystery being 250 charts. That's kind of bullshit. What do you think? How are you liking it? And yes, Sever Summoner will still be working. And if you're looking for the Blood Summoner, well, here's your build so you can level that up for Season 1.